All right, it's time to break down the film one scene at a time. Act 1. Why don't we set some shit up?
It begins with part 1, Rustic Mushroom Tart. We see a rather rotund and hairy Nicolas Cage and his pig chilling by a fire on the shore of a river deep in the dense Oregon forest. We see him head to a dilapidated cabin covered in moss where he whistles and his pig comes running. The two set out into the forest in search of truffles. Somehow the pig looks cleaner than Nick Cage, who sports filthy clothes, long greasy hair, and a beard that gets nastier with every scene of this film. That's no joke. It really does. He gets... The whole time, like when I was watching this with Shiloh, she's like, why doesn't he shower? Guy would want to shower.
I had a comment on it.
Yeah, I guess we could say it now. Is like I kind of felt like he's a pig. He's a pig the whole movie, and a pig doesn't really feel the need to clean itself off, and that's kind of what I feel like is kind of like this metaphor throughout the whole thing, and I think that's why he gained a little bit of weight for it. Which I don't know if you've seen any of the red carpet pictures from this, but he immediately lost that weight. So.
Yeah.
Good for him.
Well, this came out a couple years after they filmed it, right?
I don't know.
I believe this was filmed in 2019.
Oh.
So probably went on immediate. He had a year or so to drop the weight.
To trim up
but,
for National Treasure 3.
He had to get fit for his wedding.
Gotta look good in those Zoom calls, man.
My thoughts on this is like part of the theme of this movie is he rails against the facades people set up against them of themselves for the world facing, and that's not the real you. And I think just getting covered in dirt and blood and stuff, it's just the facade of your exterior appearance doesn't matter. I think that's just his philosophy. It's not who you are. People are going to see that and they're going to make judgments based on who you are as a person, but that's not who you are. So it doesn't matter what this looks like. In my mind, that was his thought process. And at the end, when he's done with this whole journey, he washes himself clean in the river, and it's part of his stuff. So I think that was the thematic element. That's my interpretation of why he just looks like a hobo and gets filthier and filthier as this whole thing goes on.
He also gets more and more beat up throughout the whole thing, and I kind of felt like that was also a metaphor of like his journey. He's just getting more and more beat up, and that's kind of symbolism for his life in general.
The pig finds the truffle, and Nick digs it out of the ground. We can already see the symbolism of the two companions, filthy and forgotten in the woods. We just talked about that. Digging up tubers, now long associated with the height of pompous sophistication that only the most pretentious among us can enjoy. Now, that being said, I did make a beautiful truffle mushroom dish a few weeks ago, and it was fucking delicious.
Was it a tart? Did you make a...
No, I'm not that skilled.
Did you deconstruct it with huckleberry foam and pine cone smoke?
Yes, actually, we had foam of the rustic moss that I found out about.
Foam of the rustic moss.
we see Nick, or should we say Rob, expertly crafting a meal in his cabin straight out of Alone in the Wilderness, as if he were preparing a meal for royalty.
Sorry, that was a deep cut. I don't know if you guys have seen that. It's like this old man who builds a cabin in the middle of Alaska, and it was filmed by him himself, but it was like shot in the 50s or the 40s.
Oh yeah, I've
never seen that.
Yeah, it's an amazing little documentary.
Yeah, I saw it on PBS once.
But yeah, it's definitely a deep cut that most people wouldn't get.
I didn't realize that's what it was called because it's so generic.
Alone in the Wilderness.
Yeah, it's a really cool documentary.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I'll have to check it out. It sounds good. It's almost like this backwoods vagrant was once a world-class chef or something. I thought it was very interesting that they did choose to show that part of him so early on, and I think he nailed it and did a really good job at showing like the care that chefs do put into the things that they make. And even though he's out in the middle of nowhere, filthy, hunting truffles with a pig, like he still has like that's still his way of expressing himself, like his genuine, authentic self, which is like we just talked about is a theme here throughout the films. Like
it's important. It's one of the things that he cares about.
Yeah, it's like being authentic.
I saw a little behind the scenes thing of Nick Cage actually went and trained in a restaurant for a few weeks, I believe, before they actually started shooting. So,
it shows.
That dude is like, like we talked about on The Weatherman, like he watched them do the report once, and then he just like went up there and just did it. And so he's just a brilliant mimic, and he's an actor, of course, but like, most people couldn't do that. Just like perfectly mimic some world-class chef. I mean, obviously he's not actually cooking the food, but he got the gestures perfect.
Yeah, he didn't Favreau this. He ends up making a rustic mushroom tart. That's the name of this part of the movie. That he and the pig share as Rob enjoys the quiet tranquility of the woods before he and his only friend lay down for bed. The next day, we see Rob enjoying a peaceful morning, which is shattered by the douchey sounds of Camaro revving its engines while blasting classical music as it rumbles up to his shanty in the woods. It's very like I feel like the director really wanted to nail this opposite persona that was coming his way. And I think the Camaro and the classical music, and then when he gets out, and we'll get into describing him here in a minute, but it's really like sets that character up. Like you can tell, like, dude, this guy is trying to put this image out. Once again, going back to the authentic part, or the authentic themes. Like, this guy's trying to put this image out. It's not him, though.
Yep.
Rob is obviously annoyed as this jerk cowardly pushes past his pig, but he hands him a cooler full of truffles. This guy, Amir, is dressed in a golf shirt, suit, and Gucci belt. He asks the grumpy dude if he wants him to buy a camp shower before holding his nose at the foul stench she's surely emitting, and then asks if he wants a phone. So right there, like just everything, like the introduction of this character just tells you so much about this kid. Like, he's trying to put this persona out there and create this image for himself that just is not authentic to who the guy is, as we will soon learn throughout this journey.
Yeah.
Trying to be his father, but is definitely not his father, which is actually a good thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's another theme I really enjoyed that he goes through. Is it's just like your parental relationships, and especially for young guys, like trying to seek the approval of their dad.
Yeah, it's funny how much Rob's story mirrors Amir's parents in a way. If you watch, just like, I feel like
it really does.
I have this theory that Rob is kind of like, or Darius, Amir's dad, is kind of like what Rob would have become had he stayed and not left. Spoilers. Left the city and gone up into the woods and lost his fucking mind, or whatever happened to him.
I agree. I thought that was a great comparison. It's like, this is the life he could have lived had he stayed and continued down the path that he was on.
Just bitter and angry and resentful and trying to hurt everyone in your life.
Yeah. Rob ignores him as Amir says he doesn't want to be the one to find him dead from some sort of animal attack. Then he whistles for his pig and slams the door in the jackal's face. Amir says he'll see him next Thursday and douches out in his douchemobile while Rob goes through some supplies he gave him. He puts some batteries into a stereo and pops a tape in labeled "For Robin." The tape features the voice of what we can assume is Rob's wife, who, judging by the state of Rob and the look on his face, is either dead or left him. She tells him to leave the room so she can surprise him with a song, but Rob stops the tape and sits sullen in front of the stereo for a while before his faithful companion comes to comfort him. That's another thing too. I felt like, because this opening scene it moves at such a good pace, but it really does like set everything up so well. It gives you really good character development, some foreshadowing, and then also like just the relationship between him and the pig. They capture, like, they build that bond, and like they get you invested so quick, so that when things start to happen, you do genuinely feel bad for them.
Yeah, I saw some complaint about the pig not being in it enough and not like building a strong enough bond between that, but I really felt like they didn't need to spend more time than what they did. I felt like it was pretty perfect. Like this guy's isolated in the woods.
Yeah, it's not a hard concept to grasp.
Yeah,
right.
I feel like the critiques of this movie were like really nitpicky. Like, if anybody felt that there was anything wrong with this movie, it was like really nitpicky, which I think is a good sign that this was a pretty perfect film.
Yeah. I think that's just maybe some critics feel they have to, because that's like, if they're not finding anything wrong with the film, then it's like people aren't gonna take him seriously or believe him, you know?
Right.
Some of the negative reviews felt like they didn't watch the movie at all. And
Probably
I bet
didn't.
you they didn't. I bet you they just assumed it was one thing, and they were like, "Oh, well, this is a bunch of hogwash." Nicolas Cage's John Wick epic is, yeah.
Yeah, I could definitely see that because it's not. Yeah, like we talked about, the trailer kind of set it up like it could potentially be a John Wick style film, but then as we learn while watching it, it is.
I have a deadline. I watched the trailer. All right, here comes the review.
Here's the review. Pig.
Wait, everybody else is giving this like 97%. What?
Shit. Published.
Shit, it's already published.
We cut to Rob in his filthy pajamas, consoling the pig who is scared by the howls of coyotes nearby in the woods. Rob wakes up later that night to the pig snorting and sniffing nervously at the door, which he tries to slough off to the pig being scared of coyotes. But suddenly the door bursts open, violently throwing Rob to the ground. We see a couple of shadowy figures steal the pig in a bag, and for good measure, they bash Rob across the face with a crowbar, or something as he desperately tries to save his pig.
Yeah, I didn't know for sure what he got hit in the face with. It just was a metal sound, and it was so fast and dark that you don't really see
so
what
fast
it is.
dark. Yeah, that whole scene too was shot very well. Just like capturing the chaos of it.
Yeah.
Just like that desperate attempt to try to save his pig, just to get blindsided. Well, not blindsided, but just get hammered on with a bat or crowbar or whatever the hell it was.
Yeah.
The pig screeches and screams as Rob lays helpless on the floor, but he manages to pull himself up to the window in time to see the truck as it speeds away before collapsing to the ground. Rob wakes up the next morning in a pool of his own blood in his cabin, which may or may not have been just as ransacked looking before the attack. That is one thing that kind of did pull me out of that scene. I'm like, I don't really feel like they did that much. But then he's kind of dirty, so maybe that's just how it was before.
It's like a hoarder who just throws shit on the ground, you know?
Yeah, because I was like, I don't really remember them knocking over much stuff. Mainly just beating him up and getting the pig, but it's so dark. Who knows?
I mean, you know, it goes back to that pig theme of like he's kind of living in his own filth. The floor of that place is filthy. It's
living in a pigsty.
Yeah, exactly.
He weakly whistles for his pig to no avail. Next, we see him fire up an old, rundown, rusted out pickup truck that definitely hasn't been driven in years, because it immediately breaks down, forcing Rob to walk into town, which for some reason he does by walking in the middle of the road. You know, when that guy drove by and honked at him, I was like, yeah, I'd honk too, bro.
I would
like,
too.
Yeah, there's a ton of space for you to safely walk on the side of the road.
Vagrant. Yeah. He's clearly never seen They Live. White lines in the middle of the road. It's the worst place to be.
Wow, good pull.
Yeah, that's a good pull. He heads to a diner and lingers through the window creepily at some dudes inside. He asks a waitress about someone named Marge after clearing his throat, since he's not accustomed to speaking much these days. She says Marge died 10 years ago, so he asks to use a phone and calls up the douchey Camaro driving kid who's sporting a weak version of the Tony Stark stash.
I thought it was a nice callback to Large Marge from Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
I was thinking the same thing, too.
She died 10 years ago on a night just like tonight. The worst accident I ever seen.
It'd be amazing if that was actually like where he pulled that from.
Yeah.
Large.
He shows up and is a prick right off the bat. He's honking his horn, calling him a fucker while making sure he covers his seats with some towels so Ted Kaczynski doesn't stink up the leather. He asks Rob if the giant gash on his head hurts, and Rob gives him a glare. Amir tells him this isn't his problem, to which Rob says if he wants his supply, then he needs to get his pig back. So it is kind of your problem, Amir. Because he seems to be his stuff seems to be the best product that Amir gets.
Yeah, it seems like the tweaked out, I don't know, the hippie commune that they go to aren't exactly the best run operation in the world, but Rob is always like, you know.
Yeah.
Always producing.
So wouldn't you know it, Amir cranks up classical music that also features a pompous dude talking over it, explaining why classical music is good, which is always a sign that music's good when you have to have somebody explain to you why it's so good.
Yeah. I mean, I think that goes back again to like he's not Like, he doesn't actually like classical music.
No.
His dad does.
He does. He's trying to figure out why his dad likes it and why he should like it.
Yeah. Explain to me why this is good, British guy.
Yeah. Because I have an accent the size of a tangerine. Rob shuts it off after giving Amir another signature Nick Cage glare. Amir turns it back on, and again, Rob turns it off. They head to a hippie commune or whatever Whole Foods looks like in Portland, where it's revealed that Amir buys from them too. Rob explains to the cleanest of the hippies that some tweakers in a turquoise pickup truck stole his pig, and she freaks out. That part was just a little like...
a little over the top.
Yeah.
She's the one overacting in this film.
I think it was she's just tired of these tweakers. Like, she has to work with these tweakers because I don't know.
Right. I connected because I
hunters again. Maybe she sells psychedelic mushrooms on the side.
Yeah.
And she's just sick of their shit. Like, anybody who's worked with tweakers
I was
or
gonna
been
say,
around
I connected
tweakers
with
for
her on
longer than
that.
24 hours
Yeah.
is sick of their
I'm
shit.
over it. I'm over it. You just snap. She leads them straight to an even more nasty trailer than Rob's cabin, where a couple of junkies, one of them I'm pretty sure is Sway from Gone in 60 Seconds.
Who is called Tweakette in the subtitles.
Is it really?
Yes.
Awesome. To which they explain that they did in fact steal his pig. I mean, if she isn't Skeletor, then she's definitely discount Kristen Wiig. Anyways, she says some rich city guy in a fancy black car paid them to take it, and he has the pig now. Rob explains to Amir that his pig is irreplaceable and tells him to take him to Portland, where a filthy, homeless-looking dude covered in blood will blend in seamlessly. I'm not sure if any of our listeners have been to Portland, but that's how, like, every other person looks downtown. That's no joke.
Yeah. I thought that was actually pretty accurate.
Yeah.
Yes.
I was
100%.
thinking as I was watching, I was like, where are all the homeless people? They're not showing any. But then I realized, the main character just looks like one. So
There you go.
there's also an important part. I think it's in that scene where he talks to Amir about his car. Because I think Amir mentions.
No, I think it's coming up, actually.
It's coming up, yeah.
Okay.
It's as they're on their way to the city.
That's right.
Rob says he might know somebody in the city who can help. Amir tells him he's not taking him to the city because everything he does is about his reputation and that people talk, to which Rob makes fun of his douchey car and shirt.
Listen, what I do is all about my reputation. People talk.
People talk?
Yeah.
People talk.
Stop saying that.
You like this car? You like that shirt?
Shut up.
So that's like you're talking about, like, that's the scene where he's hammering on him. He's like, you like your car?
You like that
Your
car?
clothes.
You like that
It's
shirt?
great because he's like, yeah, you like your car? You like that shirt? That's all he has to say. And it's just like, shut up. Fuck you.
Yeah, because he knows how douchey he is, like, for valuing these material objects so much. Because that's not who he really is. Like, that's not what matters to Amir.
Yeah.
All that matters is getting his father's approval, which is presenting himself in this manner. At least that's what he thinks.
I would say Amir's, like, you know, his character development over the course of this movie is like my favorite part of the whole thing, because like
Same.
you watch him go from this douchey asshole to like kind of becoming a real person by the end of the movie through this journey that, you know, it takes place over the course of 2 days, I think, the whole film.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be about two days from when he gets picked up to when the film ends. Yeah, it's like a 2 day span.
I think you can imagine that Rob went through something similar.
Yes.
And I think that was Rob was trying to get him to accelerate his path so he gets onto it and doesn't waste a bunch of his life like Rob did.
Yep.
Yeah, their relationship throughout the film is very genuine and authentic, and I felt that too. Like, Rob went through something similar, and he's trying to help Amir open his eyes to see that the validation he's seeking is not the validation that he needs, and that he's wasting his life pursuing things that don't mean or matter anything to him, and that reputation, we'll get into this all later too, but like, reputation is not as important as he wants to believe it is.
Yeah.
They head into Portland, and you can tell Rob is incredibly uncomfortable with the hectic energy of the city, the buildings, lights, etc.
I thought it was really funny. Like, it was the typical, like, almost like driving into Vegas montage for a movie with all the lights superimposed over each other, but it's all like random buildings in Portland. Like, I just like that, like, Portland was the place to be in this movie, but it's like being in the Pacific Northwest, Portland is not like I don't know if it's different in Oregon, but like Portland's not like a destination city for a lot of shit to me. It's not like the happening place. It is for Oregon, I suppose.
Yeah. Like that's the place to be. Like that's because that's the only major, like real major city that they have. Everything else are a lot smaller, and then there's just a lot of unincorporated parts of Oregon as well.
You could imagine like being a kid somewhere else in Oregon. Portland would be the place that you'd always want to go to. I would think like go to concerts and experience actual like big city life and because the rest of Oregon is forest and plains. I mean it's just
desert.
And desert
farmland.
I mean Portland's no Bend. Let's just say that.
It's no Astoria.
It's Kindergarten Cop. That's where they filmed Kindergarten Cop.
Goonies.
And the Goonies, yeah.
Rob asked for $10.
And Short Circuit.
Man, all these great films were shot there.
80s, man.
Hell of a time.
It was like the place, apparently.
Hell of a time.
Cheap ass town that looks really cool, I guess.
Yeah, it is. It's actually pretty gorgeous there.
Yeah, I'm guessing that it's not as cheap to film there anymore because I haven't seen a movie in Astoria in 30 years. No, not at all. Rob asks for $10 and heads into a food truck stand where he buys some tacos or something and gives them to a guy in a tent who seems shocked to see Rob. Rob gives him the food and asks if he's heard anything about a pig. This guy says he remembers a time when Robin's name meant something, but now he has no value. You don't exist. Which is a very like chilling scene. Like people just, this is like the first time you really get a sense that Robin was somebody with some pretty good reputation and clout. And for somebody to tell him like, hey, you don't mean anything anymore. Like you don't exist to anybody because you have no value. I was like, holy shit, dude, that's a pretty, okay, so this movie is just going to continue going down this path of very dark themes.
It felt very autobiographical to me, like very almost fourth wall breaking. Like he was talking to Nicolas Cage, the actor. Which is Nicolas Cage was perfect for this role because of that and for other reasons. But it almost felt like he was saying, your name used to mean something. You're an award-winning actor. You starred in big budget blockbuster stuff, but now you mean nothing. You just you do movies like this that have no budget. I'm not saying that this movie is bad, but he's been known as kind of a joke in recent years. It's changing. The trajectory has definitely been on the upswing, but
Mandy in this film have definitely reset people's expectations for the films he's doing.
Just go online and read how many people were like, "Oh my God, Pig was great!" Like I didn't realize Nicolas Cage could do stuff like this.
I mean, they really missed out. I mean, I really thought he started making a journey back to what he was in the 90s and 2000s when he delivered that performance in Dog Eat Dog. I thought that was really where
he's become known for movies like Dog Eat Dog.
I feel like Mandy was even kind of like, oh, this is an over the top crazy action movie. His performance in it was amazing and the movie was great. But it was still kind of falling in that same category of like, oh, this is what Nick Cage does now. He does horror movies and he does over-the-top revenge films.
Kind of campy and cheesy, but regardless of the performance. And I don't think the main audience saw Mandy. Most people don't know it exists. So the point kind of still stands. Like his name, you say Nicolas Cage. We run into it with this show, like telling people we're doing this show. The most reply I get, number one reply is like, why? Why are you doing a show about Nicolas Cage movies?
Why?
So
or when are you doing National Treasure?
Or that. It's either, oh, God, he's terrible, or, oh, you should do this one movie that I know him for.
This every time I talk to somebody about doing this show, it's, why are you doing that? Oh, he does such bad movies. And then, this movie is one of my favorite movies. Okay, you can't have it both ways. I guess you can make fun of some of the stuff that he's done, but at the same time, did you watch it? Did you watch any of those movies? All you know is another Nicolas Cage movie? Okay. So, I feel like I feel like we're at the cusp of a Nicolas Cage renaissance, and I really feel like Pig is kind of this movie is in Oscar contention, and it's crazy to think that he's done these crazy movies for years on end now, and then he does a movie that sounds like exactly the same kind of crazy movie that he's done, but then you watch it and it subverts your expectations completely, and like his name is in Oscar contention. It's just crazy.
It's a deconstruction of a Nicolas Cage movie in the same way that deconstructing dishes like world-class chefs always try to do. It's
Rob leaves looking defeated, and the guy asks Amir if he even knows Rob's real name. Amir seems confused that this nasty vagrant he's been doing business with might have, at some point, been a human people gave a shit about. Amir asks how he knew the legend that is Edgar, who hangs out in a tent, and Rob says he used to live in the neighborhood, which, that makes sense.
I'm confused as to where like Edgar was in relation to that food truck. The food truck, like that little
it looked like they were hanging out in like a beer garden type place where food trucks show up and
if you ever watched Portlandia, that same food truck stand is in an episode of Portlandia, so I recognized it immediately.
That's a real place.
It's a real place in Portland, but like where is Edgar? Is he like in the food truck area, or is he like off in why is he in a burlap tent?
I kind of figured he was back in like a tent that's set up for the employees of the food trucks to go.
Or a break area or something.
Yeah.
But he was doing like paperwork and stuff, so I'm guessing that's
he was who knows what he was doing. He's mysterious.
Maybe he runs that food truck area.
That's what I thought, was like he was the owner of that place, but I mean, I guess now a little bit further in the movie, he's probably doing paperwork for his other activities. It's kind of, I think, makes it a little more clear. But
next they head to a restaurant where a cook is taking a smoke break, which is pretty accurate to the chef lifestyle. He isn't surprised in the least to see a filthy guy walk up to him in the alley and nonchalantly tells him to go away, which tells you that they really did their homework about Portland for this film. Because once again, that's a pretty common occurrence. Rob says he's having a night out with his friend, and the cook recognizes Amir, who says the shabby homeless-looking dude is his super successful and rich dad's friend, which is good enough for this guy to let them inside.
Sure, just go in there.
It's funny now you think
guy
about
covered
it.
in blood.
Like now that we know who his dad is, like that statement doesn't make any sense.
He's a friend of my dad. Okay.
Okay.
The mob boss of restaurants in Portland. This
just walk through our kitchen. Filthy. I'm sure that doesn't violate any health codes. But moving on with that, Rob walks in like he owns the place and says they're going to the Hotel Portland before trying to move a shelf in the kitchen. Amir says Rob needs to keep him in the loop, and Rob says he's just his ride, which pisses Amir off, who calls Rob a homeless asshole who probably fucks his pig. Finally, someone says out loud what we're all thinking. You can't be living in the woods by yourself with a pig and not have people assume that you fuck it.
Rob says, very sensual animals, so.
It's true. They're beautiful. Rob says,
I don't fuck my pig.
And Amir decides to bail. Rob stops him by telling Amir that the Hotel Portland was torn down in the 50s, but they covered up the sub-basement with Pioneer Square, and now it's Edgar's place. Which, that part pulled me out of the movie. I don't know Portland well enough, but obviously, growing up in the Seattle area, when I hear Pioneer Square, I immediately think of Seattle. But
I did look it up, and this is an actual hotel that did exist and was torn down in the 50s and replaced by Pioneer Square.
I was going to say, given the detail that the writers have in this film, without a doubt, both those things have to be real.
I don't know if it actually is there, like the sub basement is actually there, but like that hotel was there in Pioneer Square and was torn down to, I think, build the courthouse or something, and then they put a park there. It's different from Pioneer Square in Seattle, where Pioneer Square in Seattle is more like a big bunch of shops and.
It's a big hobo camp.
Homeless encampment. But like this one is a park, which is basically also a homeless encampment. It's because it's Portland,
That's why he wants to go there so bad, I guess. Anyways, he and Amir move a shelf, revealing a hole in the wall that leads to some real Fight Club weirdness. He says Edgar has been running fights for restaurant workers for 30 years and explains that if your name means something, they'll bid high to see you fight. Amir asks how he knows that and questions who Rob really is. We see a fight club of some sort where apparently the rules of the game are someone stands with their hands behind their back while another guy beats the shit out of him. And depending on how long the guy being beaten can stand it, they win a certain amount of money. The first guy lasts 10 seconds and wins $500. The rules of Restaurant Fight Club are very unclear.
Was it like, did he win the $500 or did the guy beating the hell out of him win $500? Who's
He
Dennis?
looked like a homeless guy too. Like it almost felt like they're just paying homeless people to get beaten up so that restaurant workers can take their frustrations out.
Jesus.
Which I talked to my wife about this, and she actually said that part seemed completely believable.
Really?
She's a server. She has been for over a decade, and she says people who work in restaurants are insane. But one of her coworkers, they'll take chip dishes out and just smash them because they need the stress relief. One of her coworkers takes dishes home to shoot them because she wants to blow them away with guns. She knows 2 people who within the last 2 years have drank themselves to death.
Jeez.
That were restaurant workers. So she said that this is completely believable, especially like you go to the back of house at any restaurant and you'll be able to buy drugs off nearly anybody working there. Like she said, it's just it's a complete scum show, I guess. So she was like, that part was, it's probably a little fantastical, but she totally could buy it. Especially if they're paying the head chefs to be punching bags. Like, like if it's a server or something, they probably wants to beat the fuck out of somebody. Some high profile guy working. So like I guess we'll get to it there, but like, I think that's why Rob's name meant so much in that circle, because he was such a well-known chef, was probably kind of an asshole to work for. So a lot of the servers want to be able to wail on him for a minute straight.
What I just learned is that your wife has definitely beat up homeless people in this weird
Fight club. Yeah. So yeah, it was really funny that she was like, no, that part wasn't weird at all to me. Like,
it's funny because
I can totally see that happening.
I have heard that from some people. They're like, yeah, I can see that. I worked in a restaurant for a short amount of time, and it's nuts.
I was a big, I was a big fan of like Parts Unknown and No Reservations. But then after Anthony Bourdain died, I went on a deep dive and just watched all of them, and like that's the theme that just keeps coming up is like they're insane, they're cracked out. Everybody in the kitchen is on drugs of some sort. So yeah. What kind of drugs is your wife doing, man?
But we've been out like.
And can she get us some?
Yeah, she can. Apparently, she can talk to anybody in the back house. But I mean, I've been out drinking with some of them, and they'll drink till 6 a.m. and then go back to work at 11 or whatever. Like they party hard, I guess. And I can't. And that's just like normal street level restaurants, Like I guess where she works now is like an upper middle class style restaurant. It's kind of pricey, but like nowhere near like a Michelin star restaurant like Rob probably worked at, where the servers there are, adult men in their 40s who've made careers out of being professional servers to high class clientele, who are probably really probably make you want to go smash some dishes after dealing with them day in, day out.
Yeah.
So this was a cool little, interlude in the movie. I liked it's kind of a weird thing, but it fits. It lets you know more about what's going on with this movie.
It's the one thing that kind of felt like it wasn't really meant to be in the movie. Like it almost felt like it was shoehorned into the movie a little bit. But upon further reflection on it, it kind of like Robin doesn't care if he gets his ass beat, just as long as he can feel a little bit of love, like he just wants his pig back so bad that he will he'll stand in front of this little person who like beats the hell out of him and will take it just so that he can possibly get some information about where his pig is.
Yeah. I think that was the point. Also, I think it was again to set up kind of a John Wick style, like, ooh, he's had a violent past with this fight club. Like now he's gonna go kick somebody's ass, but they flip it because he's not the one doing any fighting. He's the guy getting punched for a minute straight and getting his head bashed in just so he can find out where his pig is. So,
I think that's important that he's not fighting back at all. That's, whatever the fight club that they're, whatever the rules are here, like it's interesting that they chose to make him not fight at all. He just stands there and takes it.
We've been conditioned as moviegoers to think like he's going to bust out some moves and cave some guy's skull in, and then everybody's gonna go, oh, and tell him where his pig can be. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Again, it's the John Wick style. If John Wick had shown up at this fight club, he would have killed like 6 guys and stuff. So that's what the audience, I think, was expecting. And that's why it was included in the movie, just so it can turn it on its head and say that's not what's going on here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it also speaks a little bit to his character as well. Like you said, this shows you he's not a violent person, which will kind of play out through the rest of the film. Also, I think it does a little bit of a metaphor for he's just kind of given up. He doesn't fight anymore. Like, he doesn't fight for anything. Like, the most he's fighting for is to get this pig back, and at that point, he's willing to take whatever abuse he has to take. He's not even going to physically fight for it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was an
Which we'll
interesting
also
scene.
know is a metaphor for his life. Like, his life has just been... His life recently, I guess, has just been a series of shit happening to him and getting the shit kicked out of him, metaphorically speaking.
Yeah.
Yeah. Rob whistles, interrupting "I Only Have Eyes for You" by the Flamingos, which I guess is the killer track the hip restaurant kids are all into hearing while they beat the shit out of old men. I thought that was an interesting choice. He slowly makes his way to some cardboard that has been duct taped to the wall, where he scrawls his full name onto the wall in huge letters. I'm guessing he did that just to be a dick, because he could have easily written his name smaller and not written on the wall. Everyone, including Amir, are shocked to see that this grimy bum is none other than Robin Feld, a famous chef who all the culinary people of Portland seem to revere. Everyone in the room chucks Monopoly money of some sort onto the ground before a bellhop/horse jockey, half Nicolas Cage's size, brutally punches him in the face for a full minute. But thankfully, they flipped the beating the shit out of old men music back on, so it doesn't feel as messed up.
What was with that money, dude?
I don't know.
It looked like
paper. Like,
Chinese money or something.
Yeah, it looks super fake.
It could be. Maybe it's, when they go into this place, they give them fun money so that they're not actually using real money, maybe. Sometimes you go to strip clubs and they give you $2 bills and stuff to spend because it's not real money, so you'll spend more.
I've done research, not knowing that we were going to have a movie set in Portland, but I did research a while ago, and that's true. They do give you $2 bills at strip clubs in Vegas, or not Vegas, in Portland.
In Portland. Portland is the strip club capital of the world. Did you guys know that?
It really is. God bless them. I also got the weird sense that this dude beating him up may or may not have been the same actor that was in that burlap sack in Wicker Man, and solely took this role so he could beat the living shit out of Nick Cage for making that fucking film, which resulted in him being stuck in a burlap sack for probably hours.
What is it, a shark or something?
I'll show you a shark, motherfucker.
After the ass whooping that makes Rob look even more bloody and disgusting, Edgar gives him the name Finway, who may have information on where he might find his pig, because having the shit beaten out of him made him respect Rob again.
Yeah, that was one of my few questions. Like, why did this make him give up the name?
I think it's because they make it very clear, like, you have no value, you don't exist, you mean nothing to me.
Yeah.
And then he comes down there and all these people see him and they still respect Rob despite him being gone for 10 plus years, and they're willing to pay big bucks to beat the shit out of him.
And I think Edgar made a lot of money off of that little
fight.
fight.
Yes, he had to, yes.
All right. So it was his way of bribing him, like, have all this money I just made you. Tell me where to find the guy.
I'll come down and get my shit kicked out of me just so that you can put value on my name again.
Yeah. And just to be clear, Edgar, I don't fuck my pig. Amir takes Rob to his apartment, where Rob passes out on the couch. For once, he passes out on the couch and not a passing out chair. Just wanted to point that out to the audience. I was a little disappointed. While Amir stares at him in disbelief, having been a complete asshole for years to a man who is apparently regarded as a legend. I also like, now having seen the movie twice, I also like that particular scene because, as we'll soon learn, there's a little bit more that comes to this relationship and the impact that Rob unknowingly had on Amir's life, which we'll find out here pretty quick.
Act 2, The Conflict.
Part 2 of the film, titled Mom's French Toast and Deconstructed Scallops, begins with a shot of Rob's pig happily bouncing through the forest before Rob is woken up to the sound of a fire alarm going off. Amir, who works in the restaurant industry as a buyer, is absolute shit at cooking, which I thought was great. You know, like, you know, I don't know if his dad is good at cooking, but I just think it's funny, like, that they showed that he's terrible at cooking, even though he works in this industry that, you know, Rob is, you know, this master chef, and Amir is just burns French toast.
He's the ultimate bachelor.
Which is good. It fits the character again. He's a poser in an industry that he doesn't belong in.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, did he ever really want to be in the restaurant industry, or did he just do it because his dad does it? And that's
it becomes clear as the movie goes on that it's the latter.
As we deconstruct his life.
But it also shows, like, he's industrious because, you know, he forged this little business that his dad had no interest in doing, and ended up turning a profit, and then his dad ends up spoilers, tries to take over and stuff. But anyways, he does his best, and he gives Rob a plate full of, you guessed it, French toast. Each, you know, there's the meals are in the titles throughout the whole thing, which I thought was kind of cool. Rob asks Amir if he knows Finway's place, and Amir explains that it's one of the hottest restaurants in town. Which is funny, because we soon find out that it's this pretentious, douchey place. Anyways, Amir then tells an important story about his parents. He tells Rob that they used to go out on date nights to different restaurants that usually ended up with them fighting. But on one of these dates, they came back incredibly happy and drunkenly talking about how great the food and the wine was. He goes on to say that they talked about the meal for years, even after the chef who ran the place just disappeared. And of course, this place was Rob's restaurant. Rob is kind of like just sullen that whole little meal and just kind of looking down. And then he can tell by the way that Amir explains, you know, the relationship between his parents, that something happened to his mom. And then Amir tells him that she killed herself. Because, you know, she was always, you know, melancholy and depressed and stuff, especially after fighting with his dad, which after you meet his dad, you can kind of understand. Then Rob explains why exactly he lives in the woods by himself with a pig. He says every 200 years, Portland gets an earthquake that will level the city, and anyone who survives will be killed by the tsunami that follows. Oh, and one is due to happen anytime. Amir stares at him dumbfounded, and then Rob tells him how to improve his French toast. I thought it was funny, like, kind of the throwaway of, like, obviously Robin had a mental collapse after, spoilers, what happens to his wife, and you know, ended up leaving this life behind where, you know, he was a successful chef and kind of had his life all put together, and probably didn't appreciate it as much as he should have, and then kind of had this mental breakdown that caused him to believe that he was doomed if he stayed in that city. Which is probably just an excuse to not be in that place anymore.
I just love that scene of Amir speaking about the dinner and his parents thinking about it, talking about it for years. It really, in my mind, developed Robin a little bit more to show that he put so much passion into creating those dishes and all that work that it touched people. And so, like, you can see that, you know, yes, he was probably a difficult person based off of some of the clues we've gotten from other characters, but when it came to cooking, like, that was his true passion. That's what mattered to him, and it came through his food, to the point where you have these two people who can't stand each other. That's the one thing that they bond over, and I think that's like the acts have these names because, like, this as another theme that we haven't really touched on is, like, this whole movie revolves around, like, this food scene, and it's the memories that we create around certain meals. And it was very interesting to see, like, okay, not only was he a good chef, but, like, he was so good that these meals stuck with people.
Yeah.
And it wasn't pretend. And we later learn it's not these pretentious dishes that have become modern Michelin star.
I kind of feel like he might have been, might have run a kind of pretentious place too. And, maybe that was like the little conversation that he has with the chef coming up, is kind of like, I discovered this about myself and I want you to know this before it's too late.
Yeah, I guess you're right. Because I guess like his version of pretentious was like classic high dining.
Yeah.
Based off the meal that he makes at the end versus this now like deconstructing and
trendy,
like over the top this
stuff,
pretentious new age cooking.
So another thing that happened a lot in particularly Parts Unknown was like when he would go to some of these restaurants where it was like really that's the theme of that restaurant.
Very Bourdain-esque.
I never got when they sit down. I didn't get the impression that he ran a pretentious place. I got the impression that he was always very genuine about his cooking, and other chefs didn't get that. But it could be either way. I like that it's intentionally vague. It's not you can piece together the general idea of what his life was like before this, but we're never explicitly told anything. And you don't need to just to get a sense of who he is now. It's fine. I think this scene was very important. I at this point when I was watching the movie, I was kind of like, where is this going? Like, what is going on? With it. But upon further reflection, I think it's great, and this is an important scene because it also shows him starting that, I think, to care about Amir more. Like actually, instead of just this is a douchey kid, basically. Like
he lets Amir in on the fact that he needs to get out of the city.
Well, also he now knows, as we learn later on, he knows who Amir is now. Like he remembers every dish he's cooked, so he knows who he's talking about and realizes that he served these people.
Oh yes,
and I think that's why he starts to soften to him in this scene. Not just like bringing up the whole thing about like the earthquake in Portland. I took as like it sort of suits he's got kind of a nihilistic attitude of like, we can all, and this becomes an important thing later on, but you can only care about so many things in your life, and in the end it doesn't really matter because everything's doomed anyway. Like an earthquake's gonna wipe away the city, so everybody's cares are pointless. To a certain extent, all you can do is care about what you care about. But him connecting with Amir over this, you don't notice it at first. I didn't, but now looking back on it, when he just says like, hey, you should use stale bread for French toast. Like, he could have critiqued the fuck out of this guy who ruined French toast, which is a super easy dish to make. But he doesn't. He just gives him a tip and moves on. Which is also another thing like my wife brought up. People who are chefs, even just regular cooks, line cooks and stuff, don't often critique other people's cooking because they cook for other people so much that if somebody cooks for them, just the act of somebody doing that is really nice, and they'll eat almost anything put in front of them because, a lot of chefs will just go home and make like top ramen or something because they don't feel like cooking.
That's true.
Robin's different. Obviously, he enjoys the act of cooking and stuff to it, but I think that was a very human moment where this guy gives him crappy French toast and he just sort of eats it and doesn't tear into him about it, and actually gives him just a little tip.
There's a quick shot of Nick looking at this newspaper clipping, and it's Amir's dad. And so like that, because after seeing it the second time, I was like, okay, because I was trying to figure out like how does he piece everything together to get to that last scene, that dinner scene. And I was like, oh well, dude, they started laying out the breadcrumbs early. Like he sees this, he then hears that story about Amir, and he's like, boom, okay, so I know who your parents are. And I thought that was like a great foreshadowing, just great attention to detail on the writing and directing aspect of the film.
It's amazing how everything still ties so perfectly together, even though they cut an hour of the film out.
I really can't believe that. That's crazy.
Rob spots that article about Amir's dad on the fridge, which I guess connects the face. So he now remembers. Oh yeah, that guy. While Amir psychs himself up in the mirror to try and get the reservation he told Rob would be no problem for him to get.
If you want some shit that's been sitting in a cooler for 3 days, then you go to my father. But if you want the real thing, then you come to me. I'm the king of the jungle.
Because he's such a big wig in the Portland food scene,
Right.
getting a reservation at Finway's place while listening to the same classical music accompanied by a British guy explaining why it's good that he cranks in his car all the time. Then we cut to the actual conversation, and he's ever so slightly less confident while talking to the guy who is apparently friends with the sous chef at Finway's place, who might be able to get him a reservation.
Just like a butcher or something.
Yeah, this guy's like so dismissive of him the whole time. The guy tells him he can't, since it's Amir's dad's spot, and the guy only agrees when Amir drops Robin Feld's name. So 15 years later, this guy is fairly young, and still even he knows who Robin Feld is. So it just goes to show you what a legend he was in the industry there. Rob takes a stroll through Portland and visits his former home. He hears some music coming from the backyard and heads to investigate, where he finds a little boy playing a handpan on the back steps. Rather than being horrified by the stranger who is filthy and covered in blood, he invites the potential child murderer to just hang out for a bit.
Kids are great.
Yeah.
You want to come sit down? He asks the kid what happened to the persimmon tree that used to be in the backyard, and this dolt moron kid has no idea what a persimmon is. I mean, read a fucking book, idiot. We, of course, all know that persimmon is an edible fruit related to the tomato that originated in the regions in and around China.
Of course.
Everybody knows that, you fucking dumb shit.
But you know what's funny is he makes that comment about, like, if they're not ripe, they taste like ass. And I immediately went back to that scene in Color Out of Space and just realized the plant had changed from tomato to persimmons.
Yeah, those were actually persimmons the whole time. They were just gigantic, and that's why they
He just didn't
like
know
ass.
that they were persimmons.
Yeah.
Because he's such a terrible farmer.
So he was expecting them to taste like tomatoes, and they didn't. So he thought they were garbage.
This scene ends by the kid's dad walking out into the backyard to find his son sitting with a blood-soaked vagrant. Rob is shot on sight. Credits. Oh, wait, no, actually, next we see a waitress giving an explanation in the most pretentious way possible what the hell deconstructed scallops are. And she does it as such. We all have a set of beliefs about the world around us. To challenge them is to acknowledge our foundation is sand, but it opens up to something greater, to pure connection, to true life. Today's journey begins by uniting the depths of the sea with the riches of our forest. We've emulsified locally sourced scallops encased in flash-frozen seawater roe blend on a bed of foraged huckleberry foam, all bathed in the smoke from a Douglas fir cone. Oh man, I would leave immediately, dude. Like if somebody started talking like that as they served me this like dish of like garbage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bathed in pine cone smoke.
He's like, I just left the fucking woods. I eat this shit every day. I want some pub food.
Like, she doesn't
What the fuck?
Look at this guy and be like, maybe I should save this my opening lines for all of my meals here.
And the restaurant is named Eurydice.
Yeah.
It's like some highfalutin mythological character.
We'll get into it, actually. It's Eurydice.
Yeah, Eurydice. Sorry.
Rob grabs one with his dirt-crusted fingers and unceremoniously pops it into his mouth, much to the waitress's chagrin. Rob asks to speak to the chef, and Amir tells him they need to keep a low profile because his dad sells to this restaurant, and he's not even supposed to be there. And Rob actually apologizes, which I thought was also kind of like, you know, he started to actually give a shit what this kid has to say. Rob crushes the next scallop or whatever that was there with his thumb. While Amir tells him his dad has his own business and he has his, and that, you know, someday Rob asks why he doesn't work with him, and he says, yeah, someday I will, once he's more established, or once I'm more established, to which Rob says his dad sounds like a scumbag.
It seemed like super backwards, too. Like, most people don't go do something else and then go work with their parents. Like,
Yeah.
that was kind of weird. It makes sense now because his dad runs this whole empire or whatever. So maybe he wanted him to get set up on his own before he came and worked for him. But usually it's the other way around. Like he works for his dad and then branches out on his own. But like, I guess it fits his character because his goal is to work for his dad, and his dad won't let him.
Yeah.
But that's his goal. His goal is to work up to being able to work for his dad.
Yeah, he says later, like, he means well, and I'll find him someplace where he can be out of the way, and like,
His dad just has no desire to be a part of his son's life.
yeah. I've seen this written before, and I think it's true to life. Of like, once your loved one dies, in some tragic way, sometimes you turn away your kid who reminds you of that person. And I think that's kind of what's going on here with Darius and Amir's relationship, is that he's kind of like, well, it's too painful to actually, spend time with you and look at you and care about you because you remind me so much of that person that I lost so tragically.
That's a good analysis of it. Fits the theme of how dealing with grief is the actual tone of this movie.
Yeah, kind of the overarching theme is like love and loss, and Chef Finway comes out and welcomes them to his restaurant, which is called Eurydice. Quick fact, the story of Eurydice goes as follows. Eurydice was the wife of musician Orpheus, who loved her dearly. On their wedding day, he played joyful songs as his bride danced through the meadow. One day, Aristaeus, I think is how you say it, saw and pursued Eurydice, who stepped on a viper, was bitten, and died instantly. Distraught, Orpheus played and sang so mournfully that all the nymphs and deities wept and told him to travel to the underworld to retrieve her, which he gladly did. After his music softened the hearts of Hades and Persephone, his singing so sweet that even Irenaeus wept. I was so bad with these Greek mythology names. He was allowed to take her back to the world of the living. And there's another version of the story where like he walks through the underworld and is told like, don't look back, because if you look back, she'll disappear and she'll be pulled back into the underworld. And he does so all the way up until the point where he's at the door to leave, and he doesn't believe that she's still behind him, so he turns around and she turns to smoke, and he loses her all over again. But I felt like
I think that is more key to this story.
Yes, I feel like it's all very like, they didn't just pull these names out of thin air, because Rob's place was also named after a Greek goddess, which we'll get to in a second. But I feel like that story kind of plays into Rob's story a little bit, with his wife playing music for him, and kind of a reverse of that. But then, he ends up losing her, and then kind of the story of the pig is kind of him losing love all over again. Yeah. So, layers. This movie's definitely got some layers. And I think that's why it's going to be a movie that endures for a long time. Amir asks about truffles, and the chef explains they are planning a winter menu with a few truffle dishes. And then Rob says he's looking for a truffle pig. And then Amir tells him, like, tell him who you are. And he turns and looks at the guy and reveals who he is, and the chef is shocked to see him. Probably more shocked by the state of him. Last time I saw you, you weren't filthy, with long hair and a huge beard and covered in blood.
Yeah, like, he's thinking he's a homeless guy. Like, how did this guy become homeless,
How did this guy get a reservation for my restaurant?
Yeah. It'd be like Wolfgang Puck showing up as, like, a dirty homeless guy. Like, what?
Seen you forever. I thought you had a place in Vegas.
How did you lose all your money?
He asks the guy covered in blood, who looks like he just rolled out of a dumpster, how he is. And asks how long he's been off the scene, to which Amir says 15 years. So now we know that it's been 15 years that Rob has at least not owned the restaurant, but potentially it's been 15 years that he's been living up in the woods there. And I thought it was funny. He asked him, like, do you need medical attention?
Yeah, do you need medical attention?
Which is like, there's only a few mentions of it. Like the hippie lady is like, you got something on your face there. He's got like a big gash down his head. And then this guy is like, do you need medical attention? He says Rob probably doesn't remember him, but he actually worked at Robin's restaurant called Hestia. Quick fact, Hestia is the virgin goddess of the hearth, the right ordering of domesticity, the family, the home, and the state. So Hestia is like this, comforting home, hearth, the family, all that kind of stuff. So it's like the polar opposite of the story of Eurydice. But it says a lot about Rob because like his restaurant was named after this loving, domestic, bliss family love story, and Eurydice is named after this place that killed a virgin. I don't know.
Yeah, they went to hell.
Yeah. Rob says that he remembers him and that he fired him after 2 months because he always overcooked the pasta. Just Robin asks about the pig again, and Chef Finway gets super nervous when Rob gives him another patented Nick Cage glare. He says he has the utmost respect for Rob while admitting that he had at least some involvement in stealing the pig. Once Rob finds this out, he kind of slinks back in his chair and asks what the concept of this douchey restaurant is. The chef throws out a bunch more of just pretentious stuff about making local foods feel foreign so people appreciate them more. Rob shuts him down by asking why he never started the pub he always wanted to open. Then Rob cuts this poor doofus to the core of his soul in one of the best delivered monologues of Nicolas Cage's career.
Yes.
They're not real. You get that, right? None of it is real. The critics aren't real. The customers aren't real because this isn't real. You aren't real. Derek, why do you care about these people? They don't care about you. None of them. They don't even know who you are because you haven't shown them. Every day you'll wake up and there'll be less of you. You live your life for them and they don't even see you. You don't even see yourself. We don't get a lot of things in this world to care about. Which I think is really telling in a lot of different ways here.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of like, Rob kind of talking about himself a little bit and also talking about, this kid that he knew at one point that he saw potential in, but I think he kind of fired him because he's like, this kid obviously is meant for something else. He's not meant to work in this industry. And he went ahead and did it anyway and ended up, making this place that sells this pretentious, terrible food.
Also, the acting of the chef, what is his name?
Derek.
Finley? Derek
Finway,
Finway, that's it. It's so good. The guy who acted that did a hell of a job.
Yeah.
And I saw some complaints that he was like overacting and like that took him out of the movie, but I think that was 100% the intent because the guy is putting up this facade of cheerfulness and like, but the customers love this stuff. It's a fulfilling life, right? I didn't waste my life, right? Like doing this type of stuff. And Rob cuts through it immediately, sees through it, and tears him down. And you can see the guy's smiling, but like his eyes sink behind him. You can see the pain behind it. It
goes from like this Cheshire cat grin to kind of like, you could just watch the life drain out of him as Nick Cage delivers this brilliant little monologue, which is easily like I think this is the most powerful moment in the whole film of like, I don't know, just the whole pretentiousness of this restaurant industry and him coming in here and just immediately like the whole scene is just him tearing down the facade of this whole fucking goofy little restaurant thing that they've got going on where it's like, let's just make food that's just so pretentious and stupid and like these tiny little portions and I thought it was great.
And it's coming from the guy everybody adores as like the godfather of food, of cuisine in Portland or whatever. And like he's the one who's telling them this. Like it's the pivotal moment. It tells you everything about Rob's character from that point forward to understand everything that's happened before and everything that's going to happen in the rest of the movie. And it's just this one monologue that sort of does that, flips that switch, and now the movie is like, for me, that's what it did. Everything fell into place with what's been going on in the story and what happens as the story goes from that part. This part of Rob, like, bearing his soul, I guess. He's so reserved for the rest of the movie. I think it's probably the most he actually says in the whole movie is that one monologue. But it says so much and helps you understand and contextualize everything that you're seeing that it was great. I loved it.
Yeah. And kind of, it's like that little line of we don't get a lot of things to really care about, and like you could tell that his
character.
Yeah, he doesn't actually care about the food that he's making. So it's like, you really cared about the pub. Why don't you go do that? Why haven't you done that? Why did you spend your life pursuing this rather than what you were actually passionate about?
To the point where Rob asked him, like, what was that dish you were going to make? And the guy rattles it off immediately. He still remembers his favorite dish.
Yeah.
He's just buried it while doing all of this crap. In this shitty fake haute cuisine restaurant stuff that he's bistro pub, whatever he's doing. And Rob knows immediately that he wasted his life, basically. He should have done that instead.
Yeah. Tears this guy down in, like, 3 minutes?
Yeah. He deconstructs him.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Then they both take a big swig of wine while Amir once again looks dumbfounded, and Derek finally lets loose who has his pig, which turns out it was Amir's dad this entire time who had the pig, who just paints him as such a scumbag. Like, his son has been building this little business on the side, and once it started to actually get popular and started turning a profit, he decided to take it over by stealing the guy's pig who was getting all of these great truffles. And, spoilers, it turns out it wasn't even the fucking pig. Yeah. That was
he goes after
so good.
The golden goose that's helping his son out.
And, like, what was he going to do with the pig? Like, was he going to find a different spot to, like...
I think he just wanted to cut off the source of his son's success. Like, I don't think he actually wanted the pig at all. He didn't seem... Which, I guess we'll get to it later. But it doesn't matter. The money doesn't matter to him, given how much he was offering to pay.
He just wanted to see his son fail.
Just wanted to see his son fail and get out of it, have to come back to dad so dad could get him a job working in an office or something.
Yeah. Or maybe he wanted him out of the industry altogether, and maybe there was actually some love behind it.
I think there is, in a twisted way. It's that, it's kind of, it mirrors Rob. Rob sees that Derek is meant for something else in life, so he fired him, hoping that he would find that path, and he didn't. Darius's dad maybe sees that his son is not cut out for this type of business, so he doesn't know how to lovingly support him into something else, and his son looks up to him and wants to be like his dad, so his way of guiding his son out is to make sure his business ventures fail, so he's forced into doing something else. Instead of whatever dysfunctional relationship they have, instead of actually being like a normal parent who tries to help their kids succeed.
Yeah.
It's a pretty messed up relationship.
Yeah, but again, it layers. It's these layers and mirrors between, like, Rob's relationship with Amir even is kind of similar. And Rob's relationship with Derek was like that, but in a maybe not as much of a supporting way. It sounds like it didn't work out for Derek. Maybe Rob could have had that talk with him 15 years ago and it would have worked out a little better for him. But
maybe Rob was a different person 15 years ago and had to learn some lessons along the way in order to impart this wisdom that he does.
Which we said, like, Rob and Darius are sort of reflections of each other. Like, maybe Rob was Darius or would have become him if, tragedy hadn't struck. And Darius has had his own tragedy struck, and maybe that's what turned him into what he is now.
Yeah.
It's these, like, little swirling patterns that reflect back on each other and weave really well.
I feel like, all really great movies that endure are like an onion. The more you dig into these, the more layers you discover, which I think, we probably haven't even scratched the surface of this, but, like, I think it's one of those movies that will stand the test of time. People will look back on it for a long time, which is usually the types of movies that end up winning Oscars.
Fingers crossed.
At least in a Best Actor award. We'll just take that. Rob takes the news pretty well, though. He beats the hell out of Amir's car while demanding his dad's address before telling Amir that their business relations have concluded. All of that in in a very screamy little moment where he's bashing the shit out of that piece of shit car that reflects everything he hates about the world.
Yeah. He's also attacking the only thing Amir seems to care about.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Rob heads to a nearby house and steals a kid's bike off of the porch, and then lets loose with the cagiest moment of this otherwise very uncagey film by screaming directly into the kid's face. I love that.
The twist
had
is-
enough.
Plot twist was that wasn't even the bike owner. That was just some guy that saw him taking the bike and he screamed at him.
Did you notice that they really don't show him riding the bike?
Yeah.
Because the next shot with him with the bike is him walking it.
Yeah, going
Somebody
back
watched
to
Wicker Man.
Wicker Man.
I was gonna say, well, he must have watched Wicker Man. And it's like, yeah, Nick, we're
I
gonna
don't think
skip
he knows
on the
how
bike.
to ride a bike.
We're gonna skip on you riding it. If you do have to ride it, we're just gonna put it on a track.
He'll take archery lessons. He'll take stunt driving lessons. He'll take culinary lessons, but no one's going to teach him how to ride a bike.
What if that's like a conversation behind the scenes? Is like, no, I'm not going to ride it. I hate bicycles.
I'm too tall.
But you rode a motorcycle for Ghost Rider. Yeah,
ride
but
it again.
bicycles, not a big fan. He heads to Rob's dad's place where things don't go great. And in the meantime, Amir goes to visit his still alive but seemingly, I guess, brain dead mom, who he talks to from outside the door because he's too afraid to even look at her, which I thought was pretty telling. You know, I think there's a lot of little things like that just tell you who Amir really is. He's just kind of a scared person who hasn't really found his confidence yet.
Yeah.
He tells us. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, you know, we joke about this Nick Cage multiverse, and in an alternate universe, Nick Cage would have been the person going into that room and would have snuffed his mom's life out, like he did in Bringing Out the Dead.
Yeah, letting her go.
Yeah. I'm gonna clean out her tray. Gonna say goodbye.
Jesus. He tells his mom that he met the chef who made the dinner she loves so much, and says he thinks she would really like him or not. He's not sure. I get it for the purposes of this film, but did she really talk about that meal that much? Where it's like, you remember that?
Like he mentioned, it's the last thing that she talked about where he remembers her being happy.
Yeah.
Before she
I
tried
think
to kill
that's-
herself.
yeah. So for him, it's a bigger memory than it probably is for his parents.
Especially if it was
extent.
15 years ago. I mean, the guy would have been, 10 years old maybe. You know?
Yeah.
So
I mean,
a young kid or younger, a young kid remembering his mom being happy.
Yeah. He then says he wishes that Dad would just let her die. And then Nick Cage, from Bringing Out the Dead, enters the room, pulls the plug, and sticks all of the things onto himself, since the family won't let her die. He's interrupted by a nurse who opens the door, exposing Amir to the image of his mom in the bed on life support, which is too much for him to bear, and he leaves. This is kind of, we don't know for sure that she tried to kill herself, but I think that's what happened. Was like he says that she killed herself, but she's actually still alive. She's just kind of not really there
state.
anymore. Yeah, vegetable.
Yeah. So she's basically dead to him.
Back at Darius's place, Rob asks for his pig back, and Darius says it's an honor meeting him and that his son isn't cut out for this business. He goes on to say that he didn't think his son's little truffle business would take off, but now he thinks it's time for somebody who actually knows what they're doing to take over. Darius offers Rob $20,000 to walk away, which he of course says no. And then Darius says everyone in the Portland restaurant biz are under his control, like it's one big mafia or something. So it's like, you live in my world now. Like, he tries to paint himself as this badass. Like, is he like Tony Soprano, and he just like goes around beating the shit out of people?
So like,
Cutthroat industry.
Yeah, at first I thought, yeah, like, okay, he's trying to say he's this big time guy, but then later on when the reveal happens, it made me realize that he was just putting on this facade to try, I think, to intimidate him, to just let it go, because we'll save the reveal for the reveal, but we already know like there's a little more to the situation than he wants to admit to. So I took it as like he's puffing up, just trying to scare Nick Cage. And then once again, you think like, okay, well, Nick Cage is gonna go John Wick on him. He's gonna lose it and just start beating the shit out of this guy, kind of thing. But it doesn't go that way.
What you think is going to happen in Act 3 is so opposite of what actually ends up happening. And I think that was kind of the idea, is like we're gonna make you think that things are going one direction when things are actually going in a very different direction. He then says that he'll have $25,000 delivered to his cabin, and if he sees him again, he will chop the pig up into bacon. Finally, Rob asks him if he was always like this, or was it just after his wife died? To which he asks, "Were you?" Revealing that Rob's wife is actually dead. So he knows all about Rob. And apparently, investigated him even after he left, and I get the sense that he knew this whole time that it was Rob that his son was buying from, and probably actually was, he might have actually connected him to Rob in the first place. He's like, oh, I love this chef and his cooking, but now I know he's like living out in the woods, but apparently he's trying to sell truffles, and maybe I can have Amir go and buy truffles from him, or, whatever. I don't know exactly. You don't really get the sense of what the backstory is there, but it seems too perfect for it not to have been some sort of connection there. Rob heads outside where Amir is waiting for him.
When he walks out, he does like the Arrested Development sad walk, where George Michael's like walking with his head down. He's doing the same walk.
Yeah, the Snoopy music's playing in the background.
Yeah.
Which, in a certain way, he's kind of like resigned at that point of like, well,
yeah, like
guess I'm not going to get the pig back. But at least she's alive. Because he kind of confirms, like, I'll cut the pig up into bacon at that point. Spoilers for later. He apologizes for telling his dad about Rob and genuinely didn't know that he would take his pig. Rob admits to him that he doesn't need the pig to find the truffles at all, because he can just tell by looking at the trees and the lay of the land and stuff. Which I know is true. I've actually seen people who hunt truffles and they don't actually need the pig a lot of the times. It's just the pig is a kind of, makes it easier to find the exact spot. Yeah. Don't have to actually dig all around the tree. You can the truffle pig goes right to the source. Amir asks then, why the fuck did we do all of this? And Rob says,
I love her.
Casting doubt as to whether he doesn't actually fuck the pig. No.
I was going to make that joke, but I thought, maybe not.
I hesitated to even say anything because I'm like, we don't want to underscore this really poignant moment.
I mean, it really is a beautiful moment. And I feel like this is where their relationship really changes with Amir and Rob, and he kind of starts treating him like a son at this point. I mean, throughout you'll get into it with the breakdown stuff, so I won't say anymore, but you just see like their relationship finally becomes genuine at this point.
Yeah.
So
you kind of see that, I don't want to spoil anything, but like, that he lost one person, one important thing out of his life, but he gained something important too here. And he actually has a relationship with this kid now, and he actually begins to care about him. Suddenly Rob gets an idea and he concocts a plan to get the pig back. He writes down a list of items for Amir, but he has to use the phone, which he does surprisingly well. He just starts typing away. He doesn't scoff at it at all, which that he's probably never actually used a smartphone in his life. But yeah, he takes to it pretty well. While that's happening, Amir says that if the city floods, they can head up to Mount Hood, which Rob just dismissively says it's an active volcano. And then Amir says, I'm not moving to Seattle. And Rob says, fuck Seattle.
having grown up on that side of Washington State,
Yeah.
I can't blame them. I have the same feeling about Seattle. Fuck it.
Yeah. Somebody asked me, because I'm a big basketball fan. They're like, "Well, why didn't you just start rooting for the Trailblazers after the Sonics left?" And I was like, I mean, the Trailblazers were like our biggest rival. It's not like you could just jump over and be like, "Oh yeah, now I'm a Trailblazers fan." Like, fuck no.
Fuck Portland.
Yeah.
Views not expressed
Fuck
by... quick fact, when the characters are talking about Mount Hood and looking at it in the distance, the mountain is shown as being behind the West Hills of Portland. In reality, Mount Hood is on the east side of Portland, so that mountain was CGI'd in so that they could see it in the distance while they're talking there. So,
I thought that was weird.
Yeah.
That's a weird detail.
It's kind of an unnecessary thing. It's unnecessary to point it out, but I thought it worked for the scene, and I think they just wanted a little moment where Amir would like look over and see Mount Hood and be like another little funny thing about Nick Cage or Rob's doomsday predictions and the reason he doesn't live in or around Portland anymore.
I also thought it was funny that the whole like fuck Seattle, like Seattle and Portland are like the same thing. Like they're like the same city. They both live on. I mean, Seattle's even going to be even more underwater when that earthquake hits because it's right on the water.
Yeah.
Mount Rainier is an active volcano right next to it. And there's Mount St. Helens, which is an actual active volcano. It's not that close, but it's there. So
but
it's like all
just
the
this
same
active,
shit.
There's this rival between Seattle and Portland.
Yeah, that is thought it was funny that it's like all the shit he's saying about Portland. This could have been set in Seattle. It would have been the same thing. There's also
it really was.
all its problems. It's got its own Pioneer Square.
Yeah.
Act 3, The Resolution.
The final part of the film. The final part of the film is titled "A Bird, a Bottle, and the Salted Baguette," and it starts with Rob doing what he does best: leering through the window of a bakery. Amir meets with a woman named Jezebel who runs a nice little storage shed / mausoleum where she has been holding on to Rob and his late wife Laurie's stuff. She gives Amir a bottle of wine and then shows him the plot where Laurie's ashes are held and says that she saved the spot next to her for Rob.
Where do they keep her asses in there?
I mean, her ass would be in there.
Her ass is definitely in there. It's pretty hot.
Weird that that chick looked like the costume designer from The Incredibles.
I thought she looked like the giant lady from Harry Potter, the one that's the headmistress of the French school.
Touche.
But yeah, she did also look like
Jezebel.
Edna Mode. Quick fact: the death date on Laurie's mausoleum, I don't know what those are called, where they keep the ashes or whatever.
It's like a plot or plate.
Something like that.
I just dealt with this just not long ago about a spot in a mausoleum.
Yeah.
And they told me what it was, and I don't think it's actually called a plot. Write
thing
us
from
at
Phantasm.
one cage at a time, or onecagepodcast@gmail.com.
Anyway, the plaque with Laurie's birth and death on it says she died in 2004, which would have been 15 years prior to 2019 when this movie was filmed. So there is a detail there that they actually were correct with their continuity. Back at the bakery, Rob looks around and says, "You made it a bakery," revealing that this used to be the restaurant that Rob owned.
Yeah.
The woman he's with, Helen, says, "You're a chef, I'm a baker," and that she kept it the same for years, hoping Rob might come back before turning it into bakery. Yeah, she probably worked for him, it sounds like.
Yeah.
It seems like, because she also calls him chef at one point. And she does there's a part where she stands up and she does the hands behind the back thing that sous chefs do to their boss or whatever.
Yeah, it was a nice little accurate thing about chefs. Like, I don't know if you've ever watched like those Hell's Kitchen or whatever. Those types of shows. They always kind of have that same stance.
It's like parade rest military stance type of thing.
Yeah. It's funny how the chef lifestyle is almost like being in the military, aside from the drug use and the beating up of old men in the sub-basement.
Paying to beat up homeless people. Rob asks her if she still makes her salted baguette. She says yes, and Rob asks for a loaf. She gives it to him as well as a treat of some sort, and he asks if he can have another one for Amir. It's not clear that he's giving it for Amir, but that was a nice touch that I did. She hands him the whole platter, and I really like the detail. He picks one up and he puts it down and he grabs another one. Like he's still particular about the treats that he wants.
And he wants a good one for Amir, showing more kind of development between him and
Yeah. She gives him a hug and then says, "Bye, chef," while putting her hands behind her back, as if she still worked for him. He remarks that she got rid of the curtains on the windows he was leering through. She says Lori always wanted to, and he says that it's better.
Yeah.
Easier to
I like that little hug that she gives him. Like, he obviously doesn't show any kind of like affection back. He doesn't hug her, and I think that's also part of like his psychological break, because he has a hard time like being affectionate towards other people.
But he does it in other ways, I think. Like he gets the treat for Amir. He compliments the removing the curtains. Like you would think he nitpicks it, because he never wanted to get rid of the curtains. His wife did, but he tells her, like, it looks better. Like you did a better job with it. Like, it also mirrors when he goes back to his house and he's talking about the persimmon tree, and he asks where it is, and the kid says it's not there, and he's like, did they cut down the tree or whatever? And it's more like, it's not a bad thing that the tree is not there. It's not his house anymore. It's just different.
He's like, that's okay. That's okay.
Mm-hmm. Again, it's dealing with grief.
Yeah.
Things people move on, and it's okay. It's not a bad thing. He and Amir head to Darius's house, and Rob, at long last, washes some part of his disgusting body. He cleans his hands and then gets to work, carefully preparing the ingredients he and Amir gathered. He expertly crafts a dinner like he never left the business, with Amir by his side. Amir calls his dad into the dining room, who tells him to leave. Actually, he says, "You can leave," before Amir forcefully tells him to come eat dinner. So the dish that they're preparing is like, I thought it was duck, like they're cutting up birds of some kind. In the credits, it says that it was pigeon and champignon, so they were actually serving pigeon, I think is what this was. And champignon means mushrooms in French.
Yeah,
so,
usually when I see pigeons on the street, I don't think, that looks like a delicacy.
It is in France.
Yeah.
If it's for the homeless guy.
Yeah, maybe that's all they could get on short notice, but
just like in Vampire's Kiss, he went and like caught a pigeon on the street.
I'm a vampire. I know what to do.
I've done this before.
Dirty, blood-soaked Chef Feld comes up Dirty, blood-soaked Chef Feld serves up dinner for the three of them, and within 3 bites and a swig of wine, the rush of emotions caused by remembering the only happy date night he and his wife ever had together at Hestia all those years ago becomes too much for Darius, and he runs into the other room to drown out the memories with some whiskey. So this movie had the same emotional climax as Ratatouille. That's all I could think when I was watching it. Like, have you guys seen Ratatouille?
Yeah.
The critic eats the ratatouille and is immediately transported back to being a child and loving the dish. It's the same type of.
I mean, I think
type of beats.
That is a real thing. Like, when I eat certain dishes, it reminds me of if there's a meal that my mom made when I was a kid that I haven't eaten in 20 some odd years, and she doesn't remember how to cook it anymore. I've like asked for the recipe, but if I ate that right now, it would immediately take me back to being like 8 years old.
Yeah, same.
That's what happened to me recently. I finally got a hold of my grandma's, my deceased grandma's chicken and rice recipe that I had when I was a kid, that I haven't had since I was a kid, and I've been trying to recreate it with different chicken and rice recipes, and I finally got it from my stepmom.
Yeah.
The handwritten, she sent me a copy of my grandma's handwritten recipe.
It's awesome.
And I made it, and it was exactly as I tasted and remembered from being 4 years old or whatever. It's probably the last time I had it.
We have a potato salad that my stepmom made the whole time I was growing up, and she passed. It's been 5 or 6 years, but it had been probably a good 10 years before that since she had made it at any point. And like, as soon as I made it the first time, because my dad gave me the recipe, and as soon as I made it the first time, I got like super like choked up. So like, oh shit, this tastes exactly the same as I remember. So I totally believe this whole thing.
Yeah. Rob follows behind, and Darius screams at him to get out of his house. Rob says he remembers every meal he ever cooked and every person he ever served, leading us to believe that he must be like the Rain Man of cooking and cooked the exact meal Darius and his wife ate over 15 years ago. I was wondering, like, why the hell hasn't Darius told him to get the fuck out of his house? Like, as he shows up to serve this food, and he's like,
I wasn't sure on that because I was like, he did tell him to like leave his house earlier, and like, if I ever see you again, I'll kill that damn pig. But then he just kind of was like,
that's an empty threat. So
yeah. But
maybe he's just like, maybe he was really hungry.
I got the sense that he wasn't there when they first showed up, and then he came in quietly and went to his little library study thing that he works out of.
Yeah, I also wondered that too. Like, did they show up while this guy was home and just cook in his kitchen and he didn't notice? Or it was a big house, so maybe they couldn't hear him cooking. But Darius asks Rob why he's doing this. Then he drops the bomb and admits to Rob that the junkies he hired to kidnap the pig were too rough and she died. You can't get good junkies these days. Do a job to save their life. Which couldn't this guy just pay some people who weren't junkies to go steal the pig?
That's cheaper. I mean, he's a businessman, dude.
Yeah, but also he was willing to just fork over $25,000 just to get Rob to leave him alone.
I mean, maybe he gave those junkies, $20,000, and they ended up killing the pig.
That could be. Rob collapses to the ground in grief in another incredibly performed and emotional moment by Nicolas Cage. Bet you never thought you'd feel so sad for a man who lost his pig, did you? Let alone Nicolas Cage.
Yeah,
that was my takeaway. And the acting, or it's silent. You don't actually hear him. It's like with Mandy, like when he's crying his heart out over the fire. You don't hear it.
Yeah, which I thought worked really, really well.
Yeah, I think cutting audio out made that scene work and more powerful.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's because maybe they filmed it with audio and it just kind of ruined the moment. Maybe the crying kind of didn't come across as well as they wanted it to. But either way,
I think it's
really good.
Like in those kind of earth-shattering moments, like everything just kind of turns off, And I think that's kind of what they were going for there. And like everybody in that scene is feeling the weight of the realization that his pig died.
Yeah,
and like,
you can see he loses it. He's been standing strong the whole time, worried that this is going to happen, and as soon as he gets the confirmation of it, immediately falls to the ground. He can't stand himself, can't support it up anymore. It's like he can't. It breaks the dam.
I love that. The performance of Nick Cage when he starts to tear up as he like starts to realize what he's about to tell him, and then once he confirms it, then he just drops to the ground and breaks down. I thought that was so well performed and by everybody in the scene. Even Amir is just kind of off in the back, and you can feel him feeling the same emotions where like tears are starting to roll down his face too. And even Darius, like, so you can tell that he feels genuinely terrible for what he's put this man through.
It's a very interesting scene because you have these three men who have all experienced the loss of somebody that they love, and I think like you get the sense that it's so heavy for Darius and Amir, because they this meal for Darius, he's reliving this meal that he had, which was one of the last great memories he had with his wife, and then for Amir it's him feeling the loss of his mom, and then obviously for Nick, it's for Robin. Robin has concrete evidence that she's dead, and you just have these three men just sharing this emotional ball that has been woven together from the start of this film, and it just the performances were so good, and everything just tied together, and it just shit. And then like the sound cutting out just kind of, at least for me, it allowed me to project my own emotional feelings onto that scene, and I think that's what made it more powerful for myself. Is it's like everybody's been in that situation where they have terrible news delivered to them, and then everything, like you said, everything just goes quiet. And you're left left with your own emotions. I
feel like this movie is such a like perfect example of like, it doesn't need to be a complicated story. It's a very simple story. It's just if you let your actors live in that world, and like it can be something as trivial as like a pig, like it just works so perfectly, and like it's so like, when on the surface, like when I saw the trailer the first time, I was like, oh god, here we go. It's a goofy Nick Cage movie where he's hunting a pig and then killing a bunch of people because they stole his pig. Which I thought was exactly what it was, and I think that's what a lot of people thought it was. But then it turns into this.
I thought it was from the description, but that trailer had me thinking it was going to be closer to what it actually is.
Yeah.
Just the tone they took with it.
but
I don't think a lot of people did. I think a lot of people just were like, "Oh, we're just gonna go John Wick on these guys. It's gonna be Farmer John Wick." But also, I think the whole reason he cooked the meal was this pig meant everything to him, and Darius didn't understand. So he took this thing away from somebody who loved it, and so he was reminding him, reconnecting with him, having him re-experience the loss of his wife is what allows him to emotionally connect and break down and actually tell Rob this horrible thing that he's done to him, and he finally understands how horrible it was of a thing.
Yeah.
I think that's why it works with all three of them experiencing their own loss in that scene.
Yeah.
Just around a guy losing his pig. Yeah. And also, it's like when he flips that switch and he just comes all crashing down and he falls down, it's like he knew that's what was going to come because he's had loss before and he's been holding it back, not allowing himself to feel it because he knows. I mean, if you've gone through loss, you know what it feels like, and you will do everything you can to avoid feeling it again, even when you know it's coming. And I think that's what that's what I got from that scene. Is that's why it was so sudden. He's been holding that, ready for that dam to break as soon as he got concrete confirmation of it. Fighting like hell not to have to feel that again. And the drop of a hat, he does.
Yeah.
Amir drives Rob home, and they stop at the diner close to his cabin, and they share a somber moment. Rob says if he had never come looking for his pig, in his head, she'd still be alive. Amir says, but she wouldn't. And Rob says, no, she wouldn't. Like, he realizes that it's a foolish thing to hide grief and loss like that because it's just going to happen regardless. Like, that's the emotional climax of the movie, and the end of Rob's journey is that part of it right there.
Yeah.
It's like you can
Acceptance.
tell, and you can tell from the start he hasn't. My experience of it, he hasn't listened to that tape from his wife. He won't let himself because in his head, if he does, then she's actually dead.
Yeah,
and he's and he realizes like he can't fight that off. It's a real thing that happened. That's the whole point of this movie, is him going back to these old places of his life and seeing how things have changed and moved on and being okay with it and realizing he needs to do that for his wife.
Yeah.
And that pig was a catharsis for him.
It was a crutch. The pig was a crutch to kind of keep him, grounded to reality throughout all of that. Even though he's this stinky hobo living in a freaking hut in the middle of nowhere, he's still like kind of holding on to the love that he used to have.
All he has is memories of these people, but they're perfect memories of them. And he's kind of cursed with that. He can't go back and make new ones or, continue to live his life with them. That, to me, that was the saddest part of the movie. It's like everybody wishes, when somebody's gone, all you really have left are the memories. But it was like I never really thought about how much torture it would be if you had perfect memories. Like you could relive any of those moments, but you know that you can never get any more of them.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's making me choked up a little bit.
Yeah. I also I do love that. Going back to the conversation that they have about, is it better to stay ignorant to something than to actually acknowledge it? Because if you're ignorant to it, then you don't have to process it.
Yeah.
And having to admitting that it's true and accepting it, then you're supposed to then be able to process the grief. But his character has cut himself off. Even though he's accepted these things, he still hasn't allowed himself to process the grief, which I guess is what kind of made that scene of him breaking down even more powerful, because he, like you said, Nigel, he does finally acknowledge that this is the thing that he had a feeling was going to come of it, is that she was dead, and he accepts it and processes it. And I think, I don't know, maybe I'm a little optimistic here for his character's outcome, but I think that might be the beginning of his journey to finally coming to terms with his wife's death.
Yeah,
and
I think that's the point of it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a happy ending in that it's not really happy, but it's a resolution that's necessary, and you feel better for him because he's not gotten to that point. He's been living at the point before that for the last 15 years, which is just emotional torture. So anyway, Rob decides to walk home from the diner, but he shakes Amir's hand and tells him he'll see him Thursday. again, you move on. You go back to some things change, some things don't. He's going back to the truffle life, I guess. Amir turns off the how to enjoy classical music for dummies and breaks down in his car. Yeah, so it's like he doesn't... That's Amir's moment of like, I don't need to be into classical music like my dad is or whatever. I just need to, grieve for my mom and make my own life. Like that was my takeaway from that scene.
Also I feel like he finally got to see who his dad was, and he had to admit, and once again he had to accept that that's who his dad is. His dad's this awful person. Yeah. He had to accept it. He's forced to finally accept it now. He doesn't want to model his life after his father. Yeah. And this is like, once again, being optimistic, this is the opportunity for him to now create his own image and hopefully get some confidence by becoming his own person and not trying to, not trying to follow in his dad's footsteps and essentially just become like his dad.
Plus, he breaks down in his car, which is like the only thing he likes.
Man,
so, he could have been it. He actually does care about the Camaro, and that's realized like that's his comfort. Maybe it's not a superficial thing. It's something blanket. He likes.
Yeah, I want to see a sequel where Rob and Amir take over that diner, and they work together.
You got any pie? We don't do pie.
We do pie now. God damn it.
Amir, we do pie now.
Oh, that'd be great. That would have been a great post-credit.
Yeah, they buy the restaurant.
Buy the restaurant together. And
this random shitty trucker diner and turns it into a nice little wholesome place.
A little cool. Awesome spot along the freeway or the highway or whatever.
Rob finally washes his damn face with creek water, but still, it's a bookend to the story. Yeah. The movie opens on a shot of the creek looking down, and it kind of ends with him washing the filth and grime of this whole journey off, symbolic.
Yep.
He sullenly does the Arrested Development sad walk back to his cabin, surrounded by infinite loneliness with no pig to welcome him home. And he summons the courage to pop the tape his wife made him in and listens as she explains that before they go to a fancy restaurant for dinner, where he'll probably complain about the food. So again, he used to complain about this shit. He probably retroactive
more trivial stuff.
Yeah, he's not complaining about Amir's shitty cooking. She wants to play him a song for his birthday, and she says she loves him, and the song reminds her of him. And then she plays a song called "I'm on Fire" by Springsteen. Was it a Bruce Springsteen song?
Not sure.
I'm not sure.
As Rob takes off his boots, takes a look at the empty bed where his pig once slept, and then looks up to the heavens. The end.
Yeah. So they're up there together.
God, dude, he had to give you one last punch in the gut with that close.
That look when he looks up to
to
the ceiling. Yeah. It's not like a fun, happy movie that you're going to want to watch over and over and over again, but it is a little masterpiece. Amazing little film that, I'm guessing didn't cost a whole lot of money to make, but, it makes an impression and will stick with you. I think it's going to stick with me for a long time. I'm sure it will with you guys. And I think it's pretty amazing that in 2021, Nicolas Cage, who has been, kind of the butt of jokes for quite a while here, has turned in a performance that might win him his second Oscar, almost 30 years after the first one. So, yeah. Who would have thought?
I know, it's crazy. I never thought I'd be tearing up at talking about a Nicolas Cage movie.
Yep.